Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 975B, and today's date is May 19th, 2016, and the title of the episode is U.S. House of Representatives votes to give power to the president to wage war. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, in past reports, we've been talking about how governments like to spy on their own people, and we've shown cases after case after case that almost every government is doing this at this point. And they're very worried about what their people are thinking, what they're doing. And we're starting to see out in Scotland, they have finalized plans to secretly spy on its citizens via social media platforms like Facebook. So what are they going to do? Well, local governments, they're going to have the power to create Facebook accounts, befriend citizens, spy on them for the prevention of disorder and perceived mischief. And this is what they're going to do. Firstly, someone, so-called investigating officers, they are permitted to use social media, especially Facebook, for surveillance purposes. The officers will create a fake account on a social media platform. They will then send a friend request to suspected citizens. They are also permitted to enter into personal relationships with the third-party users or be part of various groups on Facebook. Now, we see a lot of this happening here in the United States with the FBI. They do the same exact thing. And now we're starting to see it happen around the world. Because governments are very afraid at this point in time that the people might be banding together to remove them from office. They are a threat to their authority, the people. And they're very worried about this. And this is why they're searching, looking for certain individuals. Now, if you're just talking about nothing on Facebook, recipes, and they don't care about you. They're looking for specific people that have specific agendas. And this is throughout each one of these countries. This is how worried they are of everyone. Now, out in Afghanistan, we see there was a meeting, Army General John Nicholson, and he was behind closed doors with a dozen of senior military officers, including Marine General Joseph Dunford, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Army General Curtis Mike Scaparrotti. He is the new Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. And when they came out, Scaparrotti said, we're going to be leaving U.S. troops in Afghanistan longer than planned. They're saying everything is under control, but troops will not be coming home the way everyone thought. And we knew this from the beginning, that they're going to keep troops in this area. We know there's a pipeline. We know we have the poppy fields where they use this to sell opium around the world to pay for covert operations. We know China, Russia are in there. There's a huge lithium copper deposit in Afghanistan. It's in a strategic location. And they were never planning to leave this entire area. Now, out in Ukraine, Kiev is telling their journalists, don't call the southeastern people terrorists and bandits anymore. We're going to get rid of that phrase. So they're no longer terrorists because it really doesn't make any sense to call them terrorists. So they came up with a new word for them. They are now called Russian aggressors. Because they can't say the people of the country who want a certain section of their country are terrorists because they live there and they're part of communities. And to the world, it really doesn't make any sense anymore. So instead, they're calling them Russian aggressors. It's easier to call terrorists in Libya, Lebanon, Iraq, to say, yes, these are terrorists because they're not looking to break away from the puppet government. They're looking to overthrow the puppet government, so they are terrorists. And we can see right now they're just playing with words here. It makes no difference what they call them, and I know why they want Russian in the phrase of what they're going to call them, because they want it to link to Russia, of course. Now, Russia is going to restore a missile attack warning system in Sevastopol in Crimea. And they're going to put this back up because what they see happening in the Black Sea, of course, we know Ukraine and Turkey, they signed a deal. We know that NATO has a huge number of ships that are active in the Black Sea. We know the U.S. continually sails warships into the Black Sea. And of course, Russia's getting very nervous about all of this. And this is why they're putting up this system. Now, Obama is still mulling the idea of sending weapons to Vietnam. We know there's a human rights issue. This is why no weapons were going to Vietnam. But Obama wants to lift the ban. He's all for it. The only problem is that Congress is standing in his way. And who knows, he might say, oh, I'm writing a memorandum or executive order with his fancy pen and say, listen, I just decided to bypass Congress on this one, and we're going to do it anyhow. But we'll have to see how this plays out, because it looks like he's getting ready to force Congress into doing what he wants. Now, we see more provocations occurring. We saw it with Russia. We've seen it with China. And now we're seeing it with China in the air. 2 Chinese military aircraft, they intercepted a U.S. military reconnaissance plane over the South China Sea. If we notice, it's in the area where they're sailing the warships. And what they're saying is that this U.S. plane was supposed to be in international airspace, but were they really? Because according to the Chinese, and according to information that we're getting, they were not really in international space. They were coming very close and sometimes went over that line. And this is why China decided to send up their jet fighters to intercept. And the 2 Chinese fighters, they were J-11s, and they flew approximately 50 feet from the U.S. aircraft. Now, of course, the U.S. is out there, and they're saying, oh, look what just happened. Chinese fighter jets flew up against our plane, just like it happened in Russia. They're very, they're very aggressive. But we can see what they're doing. They're continually doing this in the South China Sea. They're doing it in the air in the South China Sea area. They're doing it to Russia. And it's just strange how the U.S. and the spy planes continually fly so close to their airspace and sometimes enter it, but they always blame it on the other country. How many times has China and Russia in the last couple of weeks been flying spy planes in U.S. airspace? None, because if there was an occurrence, guess what? The United States would have that all over the corporate media. Now, wouldn't that make more sense if China and Russia were flying their spy planes and they were coming into U.S. airspace? The U.S. could then make a case, yes, they are aggressive, they're flying into our airspace, this is why we sent up our jets. But the U.S. is flying their plane, spy plane, into their airspace or very close to their airspace. And they're blaming it on them that they're sending up jets to find out what these planes are, because a lot of times the transponder is turned off. Very interesting. We see the British Defense Secretary Michael Fallon signed defense and military cooperation with Qatar. And we know that Qatar, they have a base there from the United States, Turkey, and other countries. And we can see that they're loading them up, getting prepared for what is coming, and that is war. Now, the U.S. decided that they're going to designate the Islamic State branch in Libya as a foreign terrorist organization. So they're able to put sanctions on the Islamic State branch in Libya. Big deal. They're the proxy army of the United States government central bankers. This is not going to stop them. This is going to do absolutely nothing. They also decided to recognize that the Islamic State in Yemen and Saudi Arabia are also terrorists, and they're going to sanction them there too. Which is absolutely meaningless, because as we know, the U.S. supports them. If you notice, the Islamic State is only in those countries where the U.S. needs to get into or wants to get back, or needs to get into or needs to get back into. Have you ever noticed that? They always seem to end up exactly where the U.S. wants to go. Think about it. Yemen or Al-Qaeda, Libya, Lebanon, Iraq, Syria. This is where they want to go. Afghanistan. It's very odd. It seems like it's been planned that way. Well, things are definitely heating up in the Middle East, especially those areas near Syria. And we're starting to see that the Syrian government, those forces, they have retaken strategic town near Damascus, and they are really pushing the Islamic State and the other terrorist groups back. But more interestingly, NATO is going to be discussing the possibility of providing U.S.-led coalition with AWACS surveillance planes in the entire Middle Eastern area. So what they're going to do is they're going to set up these planes to monitor these areas. Because why would you need this? Because you would only need this if you're planning some type of an attack. We're getting reports, those chemical attacks, and these were not chlorine attacks that they're talking about when they are using the propaganda against Assad. They're specifically saying it is sarin gas. Now we know this is fake, phony, and false. And then we get word that Saudi Arabia, they are providing, and we knew this, Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, the Nusra Front with chemical weapons. The Secretary of the European Department for Security and Information said that terrorists regularly use the munitions in their attacks against Syrian civilians. He said the ammunition are being supplied to the extremists every month under a plan drawn up in Bulgaria and sneaked into Syria through the Jordanian border. Nusra Front terrorists have used weapons containing chemical agents against Syrians on a number of occasions, and they're continually using them. And they're trying to make everyone believe that Assad is responsible for this once again. But this plan is not going to work because it got rid of all sarin gas. And we know the United Nations confirmed this. The U.S. confirmed this. So this is going to be a tough sale to the people of the world. And it looks like it's really not getting that much traction at this point. Now we see that Obama, he has phoned President Erdogan today to talk about the fight in Syria, to discuss what their next move is in Syria. Now, do we understand and do we know what they said on this phone call? No. But we realize that there's a lot of troops being moved around. There's a lot of military assets being moved all over the place. We know bases are being built. We know things are in motion for something big to happen here. We're getting word that the U.S. is now finalizing plans to send naval vessels, warships, to the Aegean Sea to join NATO, Germany, and the other coalition forces. Of course, under the illusion that they're helping the immigration problem. No, these warships are set there on purpose because it's a hop, skip, and a jump to where they need to go when war starts. And we can see right now all of this is being prepped. Now the U.S., they're getting everything finalized, and we're going to see warships enter the Aegean Sea. Now something very interesting here. The U.S. Department of Defense revealed that it placed a $93 million order for 177,000 ballistic body armor plates. Now the last time they announced a major ballistic armor insert contract with the Pentagon, Ceradyne, was last October, when the Department of Defense ordered some 28,000 armor inserts for a price of $34 million. This happened just as U.S. troops were being covertly deployed in increasing numbers to Iraq and Syria. This time, they're ordering 177,000. So, what do you think is going to happen here? Because this is about 5 to 6 times greater than the last order. So we're going to see a lot more troops go into this area. Now, we see the U.S. House of Representatives, they voted down and rejected an amendment Wednesday night that would have repealed the 2001 authorization for use of military force. Now, that came into effect after September 11th, where the U.S. can go after Al-Qaeda and bring in troops for like 90 days or something like that. And we have to remember the Constitution. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 of the United States Constitution, sometimes referred to as the War Powers Clause, it says that Congress shall have the power to declare war, make rules concerning captures on land and water. It doesn't say the president. But since the U.S. House of Representatives decided, okay, we'll extend the authorization for war, the U.S. House of Representatives has just given the current president, future presidents, the power to wage wars against any country where he believes the leadership of those countries to be a threat to the U.S. government. So really what they've done is they've given him unlimited power at this point, because all you have to say is, I believe that country is a threat. And this is exactly what he's doing. So right now, the people do not have a say on war, because our representatives just handed that over back to the president. They had a chance to take it away, but they gave it to the president and the next president after Obama, if there is one. Now, in the cybersecurity world, cybersecurity officials from the Defense Department, intelligence agencies, and federal civilian agencies, they were questioned in a survey which was released today from the nonprofit International Information Systems Security Certification Consortium. And they interviewed these individuals, and what they found out is that the U.S. really can't detect when cyber attacks are underway. So they don't know if the U.S., the infrastructure, the financial institutions, they don't know if they're being cyber attacked. So when you start to think of that, if they don't know if they're being cyber attacked, how do they quickly find out who did it? Because in the past, within a day or so, they say, oh, North Korea, oh, China, oh, Russia. And like I said before, tracking down an advanced state actor with some type of cyber attack is very, very difficult. And there's no way they can do this within a day or so, because from this report, it shows that they don't even know when a cyber attack is occurring. Now, in addition, 59% said their agency struggles to understand how cyber attackers actually breach their systems. They don't even understand it. Now remember, a lot of this is inside jobs. A lot of this was already set up to make you think it's coming from another country, to make you think it's coming from a terrorist group, to make you think that we are being cyber attacked. This is how they know so quickly who it is, because it's already set up. When they did the thing with Sony, they already knew who they were going to blame. They set it up, they did the attack, and they said, okay, this is where it's going to be. It's going to be North Korea. That's who we're going to blame. Proof? We don't need proof. We're just going to say it, because no one can question us. It's a cyber attack. And this is exactly what we need to worry about when the cyber attacks start. Now, we see that Egypt Air flight MS-804, they were flying from Paris to Cairo. It disappeared off radar over the Mediterranean Sea early in the morning at a cruising altitude of around 37,000 feet. It just passed through the Greek airspace and was in Egyptian airspace for about 3 minutes before it completely vanished from radar. The weather was clear. There were about 66 people on board, 56 passengers, 10 crew members. But what's very interesting about all of this is that there was naval drills, Phoenix Express 2016, They were taking place in the Mediterranean Sea, and they were going from May 17th to May 27th. Now, we know there were guided missile destroyers in these tests. I wouldn't be surprised if one of the missiles might have hit the plane and brought the plane down. Now, there are reports that people have seen explosions, flashes of lights in the sky at the same time the plane came down. But we don't know for sure what exactly happened. But we've seen this in the past where there were drills going on, and by accident, or maybe on purpose, something went wrong and it brought down a passenger plane. Now, something very interesting about this flight is that there were 3 air marshals on the plane of 66 people. Now, France's transport chief said that having many security officers on such a flight was very unusual. The only times they really do this is when they need additional security, if they're transporting maybe a prisoner or a person of interest. And right now, this is suspect. Maybe there was someone on this plane that they wanted to get rid of. Maybe they were going to testify. Maybe something was going to happen. We don't know for sure at this point in time. But we do know there was a drill going on, and that was the Phoenix Express 2016. They had guided missile destroyers that were part of this drill. They were right in the Mediterranean, and people have reported a flash in the sky. So we can see at this point that something definitely went on in this area. And I'm sure more and more information will be coming out in the coming days. And we'll just have to watch it and follow up. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.